March or April. Now, the point being that like when we got there, which was obviously a very important milestone, Nigerians rightly, and this includes Manufacturers Association, some state governments and so on, raised the question that like this agreement, that the level of stakeholder engagement was simply not sufficient for them to understand the content of the agreement and what it means for them. And the president rightly then directed us, right, to pause, in fact, he was one to sign. So he decided that we should wait and complete that consultation. And then when we finish the consultation, so that by the time we're going into the agreement, we know what we're going into, not just as government, but as Nigeria, meaning that all the stakeholders are involved. Now, those consultations have happened over the last 1 year. At the end of the consultations, the president then asked for an impact assessment to be done, the impact of the agreement. And he set up a committee to do that, that is chaired by myself and his chief of staff, Malam Abakiari. We basically have also almost finished our work. We're just now pulling it all together. I believe that like we will go into the agreement stronger if we choose to go into it, and I believe that like it's the right thing to do. And I believe that the agreement properly implemented, and that's a big caveat, properly implemented is not only good for Nigeria, but it's good for Africa. And Nigeria will provide leadership in the implementation.
So what's the stuff for the textile industry now?
Well, textile industry is one where, as you know, historically, it's a place where we have a comparative, some will say a competitive advantage, meaning that like we not only produce the cotton, but it can be processed here. The challenge was that like, the same dumping and smuggling got in the way, and the infrastructure erosion or the deterioration affected it. All those problems are receiving attention today. Some of these industrial parks and special economic zones are going to focus on textiles. Number two, we have a whole cotton textile sector policy program in terms of supplying them seeds, funding, just creating a favorable environment. And then finally, we're working with some of the international and global players to come and set up here and produce. When the president was in China last year, 2018, he met with a group called the Rui Group, which is one of the largest producers of cotton and textiles and garments in China. And they produce in other parts of the world. They committed to investing up to $2 billion in Nigeria to set up here as a center and a hub for Africa and the rest of the world. And we're working very closely with them to achieve that.
I'm wondering, Honorable Minister, because the point sometimes has been raised by observers of Nigeria's CTG, that's to say the cotton, textile and garment industry. When you look at the value chain, and the question that often arises, are we doing the right thing to truly revitalize the CTG? Where are the cotton growers? Zamfara is part of Nigeria's major cotton belt. And the farmers, of course, have faced severe assault from those bandits. Where are the granaries? Where do you get the value addition? We still see, of course, I'm not asking for a quick fix, or neither are they asking for quick fixes. The textile factories in Kaduna remain dormant. In Lagos, textile factories also remain dormant. The entire, Papa will show the expressway, for most parts of it, 5-star, Aswani, you name it, Atlantic Textiles, they were all booming in the past. Are we doing the right thing to actually resuscitate the CTG?
Well, I'm sure you've had that expression. I think it was Stephen Covey that said every successful thing is created twice. First the mental creation, then the physical creation, which is what the analyst was talking about on the studio. He was talking about the importance of having the right policies and then focusing on implementing it. I believe we now have the right policies for the cotton, textile, garment sector. And your point, the key point you make is that you have to cover the value chain. In other words, whether it's in terms of the growing, which is basically where you start from, upstream, how do you make sure the farmers are supported? Because, there are lots of farmers, and then secondly, how do you make sure that when they produce the cotton, that there is an offtake, right? There is somebody waiting to collect the cotton and go through that whole ginning and processing cycle, and is to establish it here. The reason we're establishing these parks, is so that we'll achieve that. For the existing sort of players who are in the industry, most of them are asking for funding. I know that between the Central Bank and Bank of Industry, they've started providing funding for them. So you're going to see results. In the last 3 years, they've started to receive funding. I think you will see the results of that funding. Like you said, it's not done in a hurry, but I will be surprised if we have this meeting a few years today and you haven't had a bounce back from that sector, given all the efforts government has made in a very multifaceted way, right? But clearly, the results will show. I mean, it's impossible to put in those sort of investment and not get results. The results will show.
Neye, what's your take on this, on the cotton, textile, and garment value chain?
I am hopeful, very hopeful.
What is the source of your optimism?
Well, I am also mentally tied, to that axis of textile boom, in the 70s. I grew up in Motion area, so those were my play areas, the Aswanis, the Five Stars, and all that. And I also recall that most working people in that area, Mushin Solo, were also gainfully employed in those textile factories. And of course, by the time they started closing down, mostly as a result of smuggling activities and all that, we had a huge army of unemployed, and I am hoping that with this fixation, and I have confidence, because the Anchor Borrowers Program is actually a paradigm shift in approach. I'd always said that the basic Nigerian Bretton Woods mentality is to talk to big business, always, But the Anchor Borrowers focus was to talk to smallholders farmers. And that had worked. It worked like near miracle, because in 2-3 years, we started seeing results, Now, I think the same approach is being employed here. I read that about 100,000 farmers in Katsina, had been supplied seedlings. That's good. The important thing is to look at our cultural environment and tap into it. And of course, we can now grow. We don't usually have the tradition of off-taking. It's just now with the Anchor Borrowers Program that we started that. So we can start translating that to our cotton, to our tomatoes, and all that. So with this paradigm shift, I think it's very possible that we'll see results.
Thank you, Mr. Nee. Now we need to take some tweets. Nigerians are talking. Our first tweet is from Omogbolahan Babs. He says government must consolidate on its effort to ensure small-scale entrepreneurs are further encouraged to go into business. It will further generate employment opportunities for our teeming youths. Cost of doing business must be reduced drastically. It's important we have a single-digit interest rates.
Now, Dole Jack Solomon tweets, the federal government should be commended for undertaking reforms to help improve the business environment in the country, including making starting a business faster by allowing electronic stamping of registration documents and making it easier to obtain construction permits.
And Chris Simon tweets, good morning, Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Could you shed more light on NSEZCO and NEBSA? What are their roles in Nigeria's industrialization?
The Honorable Minister already addressed that in greater detail. That's part of what we're talking about, that the Senate was requesting NEBSA to make a refund of 14.3 billion naira. Honorable Minister spent quite some time dealing with that. Now, this is coming from OT Zukbea. It says, get your electricity supply working and everything else will follow.
And Law Alpha C tweets, the local content mindset of the present administration is a welcome development, but serious and patriotic local industries still have to be encouraged in many, e.g. tax waivers, reduction of interest on backlogs. The minister also addressed that in the course of our discussion.
That's right. Let's just go. Let's just go to other tweets now. Mike Ayanko, that's Mike Ayanko, is on the fourth page of our tweet. It says the importance of trade and investment in Nigeria cannot be overemphasized. We need that for economic growth. We also need both local and international investors to help develop our economy. We need exports to earn forex and strengthen our naira and foreign reserve. We must balance our trade.
And Hussein Baba Ali tweets, GMN, Nigeria's trade and investment have at least changed now a little with the federal government intervening at some point, i.e. the trader money, the anchor borrower, and so on. After peace and unity, I think we can at least achieve a lot as Africa's largest economic ground.
All right, those are the tweets that we can take. Honorable Minister, we have to let you go at some point. We understand you have some other concurrent engagements. Your closing thoughts, in addition to that, are you worried about the quality of some of our exports? There are frequent reports of rejection of our exports. And for an economy that is also buffeted, as it were, by importation, couldn't we focus much more on domestic production and meeting our domestic needs before we start reaching out and say, look, okay, we want to target the export market, considering the leakages in the forex system, whereby those that export often don't make returns of their forex back into the national coffers?
Let me start from where you stopped, and then I would use it to also get into my closing thoughts. I'm sure you've had the expression that at times the best form of attack, also the best form of defense, is attack. You know, the reason why you focus on export at times, it's like saying you are preparing to win the Olympic gold. Of course, you first have to compete in your local government, national, you know, and before you start going international. So your point is valid. But honestly, if we set our standards that high, then you find that, like, you know, it's like taking the battle to them. You know, we're not just trying to be neutral. We're saying that we will be exporting to you. Not just we are stopping importing. We will, you know, in those areas we will have competitive advantage, which is what we did in the past. Remember that also ties into this idea that you don't just want to be sending raw materials alone, that you want to add value. You know, which then gets into the issue of standards you asked about. You know, what I want to close with is that, like, the government, as a government, we want a partnership with all these players. You know, our job is to create the enabling environment to make it easier. You know, whether it's in terms of the small farmers that are into producing in their various farms, or we're dealing with the SMEs, or we're dealing with even big business that should be cooperating with them. I think we want to create an enabling environment, and that's our number one policy thrust. We believe that enabling environment includes infrastructure. We believe it includes making it easier to get government services. We believe it includes government buying from you where it's purchasing, patronizing made in Nigeria goods. We also believe it believes that government negotiating the right agreements for you, whether it's with Africa or ECOWAS or the world. And finally, it includes security, including food security. You know, stopping the smuggling. That's just the role of government. That's why I use enabling environment and business reforms at times, because it's actually a catch-all. And that's the role of government. I believe, and we must keep faith with Nigerians, that when we do that, then the results will inevitably follow.
All right. So on that note, we'd like to appreciate the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Okechukwu Enelama, who's been with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for being around.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll continue.
NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Welcome back, and I say Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Nii Akinsijo is still with us. Of course, we're getting your closing thoughts now. One of the issues, you know, again, you were talking about the ideological bent that we need to have in order to ensure that, you know, our policy and policy framework are right and then fully implemented. But I was just wondering, in terms of sometimes concentration on exports. Yes, we want to get our exports out there, want to be competitive, but in the meantime, we're still importing, you know, and if you look at the aggregates, oftentimes in the negative. So how do we ensure that we can satisfy our local demands in the first instance and then become global players?
Yeah, I think it's natural economy that there's a natural tendency, a natural proclivity to satisfy local demand before you go export. But again, there's also the pull. The foreign exchange pool, you know, that also drives exports, you know. And however balance we want to put it on, when you export, it also means that there is a form of enablement within the local industry. It means that you are producing also to a certain standard. You may not be satisfying the local needs, as it were, But again, there is a tendency that you are building a trend towards increasing production. The last figure I had, I think December 2018, we increased our agricultural export by 500%. We increased our manufacturing export by 350%. Now, what that translates to is that we are increasing capacity, one. Two, we are also filling up usually empty vessels that brings goods into Nigeria, imports, and usually would go empty, and usually translate to higher cost of vessel, CI for us. But now, if there's a guarantee of goods being moved out of Nigeria by vessels, there's also a consideration for vessel pricing for us. So it also has its own impact, as it were. And yes, if we are talking diversification, if we have some courageous people, and I'm saying courageous because it takes courage, to be involved in export. So if we have some courageous Nigerian entrepreneurs that are decided to go out and export, we should encourage them.
We talk about all of this. Where is our heavy industry?
Liverpool might have done what was deemed impossible in 90 minutes, but Spurs clapped back and did the unthinkable in 45 minutes. With an away goal advantage from the first leg, Ajax had taken a 2-goal lead at Amsterdam in the first half to make it 3 on aggregate.
Tadic to the left-hand side.